Get started. Thank you very much for joining at this last minute, excuse me, for this last minute webinar, obviously on a very momentous day. Excuse me, I apologize. Obviously, all you know, Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities. They struck Iran's military leadership, the nuclear scientists, the U.S. And Secretary Rubio said early on this was a unilateral Israeli action, and the U.S. kept distance from it. We'll talk about all elements of this attack. Sorry, I have a sore throat. And we're joined by our all-star team, three of our Israeli generals, General Norkin, distinguished fellow at JINSA, and he's the previous Air Force commander in Israel. General Yaakov Ayish, our senior VP for Israeli affairs, and also former IDF head of IDF operations and defense attaché in Washington, and General Yaakov Amidror, also another JINSA distinguished fellow and a former national security advisor, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and John Hanna, the Randi and Charles Wax senior fellow. Okay, I'm going to start with the Air Force, since they seem to have had something to do with everything here. I know you're not going to get into it, General Norkin, but obviously this was an attack that was the plans for which were developed over many years, and obviously including during your 5 years as Air Force commander. So why don't you start us off and try to tell us something that we're not getting in the newspapers about what Israel just did?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the opportunity in specific this historical day. I think that in those days we are changing the Middle East map, and I'm sure that my friends they are going to speak about it. But in the beginning, I would like to mention that I would like to be modest, and although there is a huge success in the first 12 hours, we are just in the beginning. And in the Air Force, we used to say that the debrief should done after landing. So it will take another week or two to understand the whole picture. But for the first 12 hours, I would like to give you some details and database and to put us all on the same page. So at midnight, the Israeli Air Force started the operation, and what we did in our first, let's say, 2 or 3 waves of attack will be briefed by few slides and short clips. First of all, the distance between Israel and Tehran is 1,500 miles. So it's quite long missions, and it's not something that the Israeli pilots are depart, and then in 5 minutes we are flying above Gaza. It's a long flight with a lot of challenges through the flight. So what we did in our first wave is, first of all, of course, to have our air superiority. As you all know, in our last attack in Iran, we attacked the S-400 and the S-300, the air defense, the strategic air defense systems. But the Iranians still got, till yesterday, tens of systems that they made by themselves. And we can see here the SA-69, SA-68, SA-71, 63 different kinds of anti-air air missiles systems, very advanced, long range, 300 kilometers, 100 kilometers, 25 kilometers, and then they secure the Iranian skies. And the first mission for the Air Force was to have the air superiority. And in the first wave, we destroy most of them. And by that, now we can fly above the Iranian soil. So this was the first mission. And I think that for that, you need to have a very accurate intelligence. And because without the intelligence, you cannot, let's say, hit those targets in your first wave. The second thing, of course, we attacked the headquarters and the apartments of all the Iranian military leadership. Some of them were on the ground and some of them were underground. And I think that the fact that we took them out, it will make the Iranian regime and military very hard to reorganize and to understand the situation in Iran and to coordinate the Iranian react over Israel. And of course, to know where each of them is sleeping and to attack all those apartments and headquarters at the same second. Because if we are going to attack them between them a few minutes, they can update each other, and then they might went out from their targets. So that all the missiles, all the bomb, hit the targets at the same second. Tens of targets over Iran at the distance of 1,000 miles from Israel. This is something we work on for, let's say, very long time. And of course, I would like to present the second, some illustration of those activities. Let's see it here. So you can see the Middle East map. You can see here the left side, the state of Israel, which is very small state, as you all know, with the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, and at the right side, Iran. You can see the size of Iran, the distance between Israel and Iran. We should fly or above Syria or above Jordan, and of course we need to fly above Iraq or Saudi Arabia. So you need to coordinate or to have air superiority above Syria, which will help us a lot. So once we understand where are all those targets, as you see here in the picture, we can plan our mission, and we attack all the radars, all the launchers, and by that, in the second and the third wave, we can fly above Iran with less risk. So this is the way that we act in the first wave against the air defense system and against the headquarters and commanders. Of course, we got also a previous intelligence about the ballistic missiles that the Iranian prepared, and they plan to launch those missiles if the Israeli Air Force is going to attack Iran. So those missiles were in a very high alert. So the third mission in the first wave was to attack the high alert launchers that were ready to be launched toward Israel. As you see here, this is a video from the Air Force platforms one of the ballistic missile launcher after attack. And you can see the secondary explosion, and I'm stopping here. This is a second ballistic missile. You can see it's an infrared camera from an aerial platform. You can see the missile and the launcher. It's a very long track, and now after the attack, the ballistic missile explode and all the launcher is going to be destroyed in a very short time. So headquarters, apartments, military leadership, air defense system, and then we can get to the nuclear facilities. And for that, I would like to share the last short clip. Let me do it. So now you can see again the Israeli, the Middle East, and the distance is 1,000 mile. The airplanes and they fly above Syria, and all the Iranian nuclear assets looks like that. Some of the targets are on ground, but most of the targets, the Iranian nuclear facilities, they are underground. You can see 2 or 3 floors below the ground, and we need to penetrate into those targets and to destroy all the centrifuges like we see in this short clip. So at the morning, all those missions already been done, and then the Iranian launch around 100 cruise missiles and suicide drones toward Israel, and the Israeli Air Force, with a very good cooperation with the American Air Force and others around Israel, and you can imagine who are the others, work very closely to the Israeli Air Force, and together we intercept them all. And as I know, no one get into the Israeli border. So we took out the 100 cruise missiles and suicide drone. And now the Air Force is still acting in Iran. We already destroyed one of the major airports and other very important targets. So to understand what we did in the last 12 hours, and of course, now it's we need to defend our nation, because I'm sure that the Iranian, they are going to launch more cruise missiles, and they are going to launch a ballistic missile toward Israel. So there is a lot of responsibility over the IDF shoulder. And I hope that the close cooperation that we share with the American military will be at the same level at the diplomatic, at the government level. And for Israel, it should be better to have the shortest war, because to have let's say a ping pong game for 2 weeks of missiles and attacks, this is not the way that we would like to see the next 2 weeks. So this is for the beginning, to put us all on the same page.
Yeah, General Norkin, thank you very much. First of all, I want to say, anyone who's been talking to Israeli military folks for many years have said, could you really do this? I've heard so many times, especially from Americans, including a number of retired U.S. generals, saying Israel can't do it. I've heard before Israel had their chance in 2012. Netanyahu doesn't have the guts. I've heard all these things over the years. I always thought Israel was going to do it, and actually JINSA has been writing about this since last fall. I think that we thought there'd be attack, perhaps in the spring. But I have one quick question to ask you, and then I'll turn to General Ayish. Just on the air defense, there have been reports that some of the air defense systems by the Iranians were taken out from Iran, that Israel had placed drones at a drone base inside Iran and maybe put some other devices inside Iran and take out the air defenses, some of the air defense systems. You want to comment on that or not? But there have been reports stating that.
Ayish?
Oh, I was asking you, General Norkin, first, but
Okay.
yeah, sorry.
So
Then I'll turn to General Ayish.
I think, yeah. Ayish is responsible for the ground activities in this panel. But well, as you mentioned, it's already published that the Mossad act from areas inside Iran. People spoke in the last 2 weeks about the Ukraine operation against the strategic bases and airplanes of the Russians. So, as we know, the Mossad is very, let's say, familiar with those activities, and he used drones and hovers to attack some of the tens of targets that Israel already attacked in the last 12 hours. Those hovers can attack a soft target. They cannot penetrate to underground target, or they cannot penetrate a wall of a house or headquarters, but they can attack many targets that are soft target, important targets. So we should appreciate a lot, of course, the Mossad, not just for the, let's say, drone operation, also for the intelligence that the Mossad gave to the IDF and support the military intelligence to achieve all the targets and what we achieved in the last 12 hours. And that session, I would like to add that we didn't just take out the military leadership, we also took out some nuclear engineers, which are key actors in the Iranian program. So to understand what the top level engineer, where he is living, this is something that I'm sure that the Mossad put on the table.
All right, thank you. By the way, I mean, I didn't say it up front, but as you said, the first 12 hours, I think, have been an amazing display of Israeli ingenuity and military force. And as you pointed out, General Norkin, which I think I have not seen reported, is the split-second timing in all these attacks, that they would basically be simultaneously on these senior figures. It was very important. I really, kol hakavod, so far, what we've seen so far has been very impressive. General Ayish, okay, we heard the Air Force commander. What could you add to that on the operation?
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll join the previous comments of General Norkin by saying it's only the beginning. People have to understand this is a full-scale war with a huge country. 1,000 miles, 3,000 miles from Israel, and things are yet to be unfolded. It's only the beginning. I'm going to describe 8 immediate points which I found.
How many days do you think that? Sorry to interrupt. Just 1 second.
In a second, I'll get to the timetable, but I want to try to frame it and speak about the strategic objective, the strategy adopted by the Israeli government, as we have seen it already in the north with the Hezbollah, and then 8 immediate short points that were implemented here, which are vital to have a general understanding, because we are going into this war with Iran from a war in several different fronts, to include Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran. Keep in mind what have happened in October last year, when we took some of their defense assets, etc., etc. Having said that, there were 4 immediate objectives. One is to kill, to decapitate high-rank commanders. Second, to decapitate nuclear engineers. And in a second, I'll explain why it was so important. The third element, as the General Norkin described it, is to really to naked the Iranians from air defense assets and pretty much to open and pave the way for the Israeli Air Force, or maybe in the future to some other air forces to be active in Iran. And here comes the important point. At the same time, the Air Force and the IDF were requested to deal with their strategic ground-to-ground capabilities, i.e. Ballistic missiles and drones and the UAVs. And this is what they have done until now and still doing, suppressing those capabilities. It means to allocate quite a lot of resources for that. At the same time, there is a huge defensive effort over here in Israel. We were woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Israeli time, to an alert saying it's a new situation, be alert. Once we will have a siren, we are going to have new instructions in Israel, and all Israeli society is recruited to that effort via very specific briefings. There are another three elements. One is regional coordination, and obviously the coordination with the US that I won't elaborate. And here I want to finish with the complementary Mossad, and I'll be very sensitive here because it's only the beginning. It's not the end of it. Mossad and Special Forces effort. What was published and what we have seen is only the tip of the iceberg of what is going on. It's a complementary effort, part of the general strategic and operational idea that is implemented by the IDF, and the ability to execute it is lying on years and years of intelligence preparation, operational preparations, and covert operations. And I'll stop here because it's not the end, Mike. People tend to think that what we have seen is the major thing and it's the end. No, it's not the end. I'm afraid we haven't heard about many sites that I'm sure that our audience are going to ask about them, and my colleagues are going to talk about them. And the strategic idea is really a result of a combination of 4 points. One is the sufficient amount of enriched fissile material that they were having. The second, as Prime Minister Netanyahu was saying, they were going to weaponize it. And the third one is a very intense and wide effort on ballistic missiles that can carry these bombs. And by itself, it's a strategic, if not an existential threat for the threat of Israel. That's why you have seen the Air Force going to Tabriz and Karamansha. These are ballistic missile bases that the Air Force dealt with them on the first hour once the air was cleared. So the culmination of those led the operation to the stage where we are, and it's only the beginning.
Okay, if I could ask one quick question before I turn to General Amidror. One of the things I'm sure people are thinking about as they're listening to you, General Ayish and General Norkin, is Natanz reportedly has been hit, and apparently hit hard based on what we've seen. And we've seen some videos on X and something, but Fordow so far hasn't. But as you pointed out, General Amidror, this isn't over yet. I mean, General Ayish,
Exactly, and it's not only Fordow, and the IDF is exactly the IDF in purpose is publishing what they want to publish, and as we speak right now, the third and the fourth wave is active all over Iran. That's why I'm saying for the second time, it's not the end; it's only the beginning, and we have to be very humble and very careful because we are talking here about a very long route that these forces are doing. It's a tremendous effort, and there is a lot to be done. And I'm sure that in a second we will ask ourselves, okay, what do we want to achieve and how we are going to achieve it? But I'll leave it to my colleagues here. to discuss those points.
General Amidror, we just heard the Air Force Commander J3. So, what's your sense of?
Personal remark, if I may. I was the head of the Intelligence Assessment Division in '94 when we found the first steps of the Iranians in the nuclear military project. It took us 2 years to convince the Americans that such a project exists in Iran. And when we ask all the experts here and there in America how long it will take them to build a bomb, they said between 10 to 15 years, meaning between 2005 and 2010. We are now 15 years after that, and now we understood that they came to the point in which if they will not be stopped, they will have a nuclear military capability. As was said, they have the enriched uranium. We found that the weaponization team is working very hard. As was revealed by the IEA in yesterday morning, they cheated in the last 20 years about their efforts to build the bomb a few years ago, and they didn't tell the truth about some places in which they found the monitoring team found the enriched uranium that they didn't have any explanation to. And they begin to work on the combination between the bomb and the missile, and they have many missiles, as you know, that can reach Israel. By the way, the first missile that they tried to build, they didn't succeed, and they went to the North Korean to buy North Korean long-range missiles. The people in North Korea told them, we have on the shelf 1,000-kilometer missile, no dome was in it. And they said 1,000 is not enough. So the guys in North Korea asked, what is the minimum from your point of view? And say 1,300 kilometers. If you take a measure and you see the distance between the border of Israel and the border of Iran, the border, not the facilities, it is 1,200 kilometers. So when the Iranians wanted the first long-range missile, it was purposely, they asked the North Korean to give them something that can reach Israel. They didn't mention the name Israel, by the way. They spoke about ranges. And when we revealed it, we told the Americans that this is the beginning of the process. I'm very sorry that in the agreement with the Obama administration, they didn't mention the missiles, and they continue to improve their missiles. And today they have for a few thousand kilometers, including the range of Europe. Part of Europe is within the range of their missiles. And they said that within 5 years, they will reach the range which is good enough to reach United States as well. Anyhow, we come to the conclusion after so many years that this is the time that, but we cannot say anything about that without mentioning the long war that we are in. What we did in the war is to change the whole structure of the frame within the Iranians and the Israelis are acting against each other. The Iranians had two legs. One is the nuclear capability, and the other one was the ring of fire around Israel, which was based on what they built in Lebanon, Hezbollah, what they built in Gaza, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, what they didn't succeed fully to build in Syria, and militias in Syria and in Iraq, and the Houthis. And of course, Syria was part of the bridge between Tehran, Baghdad, Damascus, and the Mediterranean, Beirut. It was called by King Abdullah of Jordan the Shiite Crescent. We call it Ring of Fire. During the war, slowly, we succeeded to destroy the whole Ring of Fire. And in a way, we succeeded to change the whole abilities of the Iranians to put threat on Israel. Because when we were there to make decisions 15 years ago, we understood that any decision to attack Iran, the meaning immediately will be that we will have to deal with 100,000 rockets, missiles from Gaza, from Lebanon, and from Syria. Today, it is one-on-one. It is us and the Iranians. They lost the whole ability. So when in the past, when the Americans told us, be careful, if you do it, you put in place the whole Middle East. They don't have the capability anymore. And today, it was much more easier to make the decision because it is us and the Iranians. And all the other proxies do not exist. The ability of Israel to neutralize all the system of the proxies during the war was a fantastic way of neutralizing the ability of the Iranians to prevent us from doing what was needed, because they can say, guys, you do it with us, you have to face, I don't know, huge problem. I think that should be remembered because people didn't understand many of our steps in the future. Why you go to Lebanon, why you go to why you go to Rafah, why you do that, why you do that. At the end, all the time we understood that at the end we will have to fight the head of the snake. And for fighting the head of the snake, you have to neutralize all the capabilities around it. And now, after it was achieved, you can see what was done, and General Norkin described it better than, for sure, better than me, and what the Mossad did is very important. By the way that we succeeded to integrate the Mossad actions within the frame and the schedule of the military action is something that should be learned. Remember, the Mossad is a civilian organization under the Prime Minister. The IDF and the Air Force are military system under the Ministry of Defense. And to coordinate all these actions together between agencies which are not reporting to the same boss, at the end of the day, everything is going to the Prime Minister, but it's totally different agencies to work together to build a plan in which everything is integrated, and to a millimeter, to a second of change will make the difference, as was explained by General Ayish. I think that this is a very important and successful example of coordination and cooperation, and it will be used in the future as well. Don't worry about what was achieved and what is the goal. The goal at the end is the military nuclear capability of Iran. We are not speaking about regime change. The regime will not change because of what we did, with all the success that we have. We don't speak about how crippling the economy of Iran. We didn't attack even one civilian target. We are speaking very clear and very focusing our attempt. And it's very important to understand because it might change, depends on the reaction of the Iranians. We are speaking about annihilation of the Iranian capability to produce a bomb. That's all. It's very minimal. It's very focused. Can it be achieved? The answer is probably we cannot achieve the target of stopping it for eternity. We can delay it. And the more it will be delayed, the better. By the way, when we went to the reactor in Baghdad in the 80s, and I was very junior then, and within the group which made the decision, the expert told us, if you do it, you just win time, because they will find, and by the way, Saddam Hussein found another avenue to work, but he didn't have enough time, and they don't have a nuclear bomb. We are speaking about time in the Middle East. We cannot prevent Iran totally for eternity. We understand it. That can be achieved only by an agreement, and we don't have the ability to achieve the agreement. Maybe America can. So what we need is to delay it. And we did many steps to delay by destroying some of the facilities. We have some facilities we didn't yet, and killing some of the scientists which are responsible for the future weaponization of the nuclear bomb. And this is a very important action. Of course, I don't have to mention the intelligence which is needed to do it. In the morning of Friday, this Friday morning was supposed to be excellent and what is achieved during the years, and I can say that my students are doing it better than me. The last remarks is that we succeeded, as was described, to intercept the first wave of the reaction of the Iranians. Now we are waiting for the second one, which will be built probably on their ballistic capabilities. Just now, the spokesman of the IDF published an announcement that the IDF worked very hard to press the capabilities of the Iranians, and the fact that that was published by the IDF is more than a hint that the IDF is very satisfied from the results, the BDA that they have. We don't know how much they succeeded to destroy and how much was still in the hands of the Iranians. The Iranians will have to make here a decision. We remember that when then Israel will be attacked by missiles, we have here the TAD unit, which is very helpful in the combination, which give us the ability to defend ourselves from a ballistic attack. But let's see what will be. This is the next test of Israel. So parallel to our continuation of degrading the abilities of the Iranians in Iran, we are preparing ourselves to the next retaliation wave that probably will come within the few hours, and it will be built mainly on ballistic capabilities. And here, the big question is how much remain in the hands of the Iranians. I don't have an answer. I don't see in intelligence. And this is what I had to
I have
my friends.
Let me ask you a couple quick follow-ups, and I'll turn to John on the U.S. side. Look, we got a lot to talk about. We'll only do so much before in this 1 hour, and then we'll have another webinar early next week. But let me ask you, I think this might be what in baseball terms we would call like a pitch down the middle, an easy question for you, which is that you've heard so many times Israel doesn't have the capability, they're not going to do it, they don't have the guts, they need the United States. What have you seen, what has been done so far? What should the world understand about Israel and their capabilities?
I think that we showed three very important things. One, we have the ability to reach Iran, to neutralize its defense systems, and to reach any target that we want. And they didn't succeed to stop us in any target which we had in mind to destroy. The second thing is that Israel has a very strong defensive system. 3 months ago, I was in Detroit, and in the middle of the competition with the Knicks, they begin to say, defense. And I asked my American partners what they say, and say, defense. Say, well, you don't win with defense. So no. You cannot win with defense, but you cannot win without it. And defense is very important. The fact that we succeeded to intercept this first wave is telling something to the Iranians. And the third element, which is very important, the Americans have some capabilities that we don't have. And to destroy the whole system, the Americans have better capabilities to do it. But we are still working. It's just the end of the beginning. And let's see what will happen in the future.
General Norkin,
if I might add, General Amidror and myself, we share the same committee under the name Nagel Committee. And as we know, we published the report that Israel should change the national security policy. And I think this is the first time that we act, let's say, under this policy. And this specific chapter, the report, Amidror know him very well. So
it was not easy to convince all the others that would be written so clearly.
So we need to defend ourselves by ourselves. This is something, and we need to act once we recognize, let's say, a threat like the nuclear threat. We didn't do it in Lebanon, and we didn't do it in Gaza at the right time. But now I think that we presented in Iran. And the second issue that we all remember that the military campaign is still in the beginning, but after the military campaign, there is a diplomatic campaign and other that should be done to achieve the goal of better Middle East for Israel and all their neighborhood.
Okay.
Just to keep our modest attitude, it is true that all the pilots were Israelis, but all the airplanes were American made.
Okay.
And we should not forget it.
One quick thing, and then I want to turn to John, and obviously the U.S. component is, but there's so much to ask here. Either General Norkin or any of you, I guess maybe one of the surprises has been so far the elimination, the killing of the senior military officials, and it seems in Iran.
The price for whom?
Okay, I'm talking about, fair enough. I'm talking about from the U.S. side. Obviously, you all were much more familiar with this, but I guess is the purpose, like we saw with Hezbollah a bit, you want to kind of not only gum up the works there, slow their response, that some of these folks were particularly important, maybe not like a Soleimani, but something like that, so therefore it would impede the retaliation. Is that the...
If I may, I think that the key for your question, the key answer is intelligence. It cannot be done without a very accurate intelligence. And as was mentioned, it's a combination of the IDF intelligence and the Mossad. For years, we worked to prepare it. And what you see are the fruits of these efforts. But even if you have the intelligence, at the end you have to have the means on the ground to implement in the right time and to coordinate it with the all big schedule. Otherwise, they will walk out. So
Okay.
It's far more than intelligence. I agree that it's a vital element, but you know, these people have to be replaced. They are coming with experience, with trust. They know each other. They have unique relations, some of them with the supreme leader. He's working via them as vehicles. So at the end of the day, once you remove these players, definitely you disrupt the system. Take a look at what had happened with Soleimani and now multiplied. Take a look at what have happened with Nasrallah and his successors and multiplied. That's the impact. And at the end of the day, when it comes with all the other elements that myself and my colleagues have described, you are getting a better picture. And it's not the end, Mike. I insist on that point. We are only at the beginning of this campaign, and there are two elements that I'm afraid we won't have the time to discuss that were neglected here. Two elements that led for the timing now. One is the weaponizing, and the second one is their ability to build a number of missiles to overwhelm the Israeli system. And at the end of the day, the Israeli government said, no way, we're not going to allow it. It's going to be a trigger. And together with the failure of negotiation, it led to the campaign.
All right, thank you.
But I have to add something about, we have to be more modest. Iran is not Hezbollah. And with all due respect to those which had been eliminated, thank for each of them, they are not Nasrallah. Iran has a deep state and deep establishment. Yes, all the substitutes are not as good as those which had been eliminated, but it's not the situation of Hezbollah, in which by eliminating the leadership, it's the end of the ability of the organization. This is not the situation in Iran. It is important, very important. With the scientists, it is even more important, but it is not Hezbollah. We will have to deal with Iran in the future because they didn't lose the ability to act.
Okay. All right, John, Finally, sof in Hebrew. We batting fourth here. The U.S. side, and maybe it's appropriate that we don't have as much time to talk about the U.S. because the U.S. seemed to be a relatively, well, based on reports, not a significant player, maybe acting as a decoy. As we said, Rubio made the statement, obviously speaking for the whole administration, that this was a unilateral decision. It was clear the U.S. kept a distance yet last night. Then, as it seems like as this became at least the initial stage, this early stage looked extremely successful. You saw President Trump this morning saying it was excellent. We knew about it. And reports suggest that the U.S. coordinated with Israel to act as a decoy to help give the Israelis this element of surprise that enabled them to hit all these senior officials and others, frankly, catching the Iranians with their pants down. I guess, John, how do you see the U.S. role? Obviously, JINSA, we have put out, I think, a statement this morning or last night, I can't remember, and we've written things that will appear today, suggesting the U.S. needs to stand by Israel, be very clear. So far, it seems like, and I'll stop on this long introduction, you have a number of Republicans, a lot of Republicans, Senator Cotton, Lindsey Graham, and others saying we stand by Israel, we offer prayers. Nothing about action, by the way. Then you have a number of prominent Democrats, Senator Kaine, Murphy, Senator Reid, pretty much blasting the Israelis and saying this is reckless, it's going to lead to a war, etc., saying that they screwed up the negotiations and so on. Actually, I think one of the most forward-leaning of all the members of Congress was Democratic Senator Fetterman, who actually talked about helping Israel, giving them the weapons. But he's the only one, at least that I've seen, I might be missing some, that's talked beyond standing by prayers and so on, and actually talking about things that we could do to actually, concretely help the Israelis. John, how do you look at the U.S. so far on this?
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of random thoughts that I'll try and get out, Mike. First of all, it's hard to know exactly how deep the level of coordination was between the United States and Israel this week. Was this a grand deception that the United States was in all along and an active participant in fooling the Iranians, that there was a negotiation going to happen Sunday? Certainly nothing would happen until then. That was my prediction as recently as yesterday, that we would probably get through this weekend without a strike, but then it may follow soon after that. It's hard to tell, but certainly, I mean, listen, you have to say Israel expended a huge amount of munitions last night and over the recent hours. The Trump administration, I think, undoubtedly played a key role in providing that kind of capability to do this. Those Israeli jets flew through a lot of airspace in which the U.S. has some level of control, particularly in parts of Iraq that U.S. had to know about and no doubt probably facilitated. There's, as General Amidror said, there is at least one THAAD battery in place in Israel, helping to defend Israel, with at least 100 American soldiers or so on the ground, ready to help defend Israel. And there are some reports this morning that in addition to Israeli and Jordanian pilots, there were American pilots up in the air today helping defend against this initial Iranian drone and cruise missile attack. So I think we're watching this unfold. I do believe, that after this attack, whether or not the Americans were active participants in it, that our interests now are completely aligned with Israeli interests. I think it's important that the president realize that we now have a deep stake in ensuring that this effort to destroy as much of the Iranian nuclear program as possible is entirely successful. We still have to see what happens with facilities like Fordow, what happens with potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of advanced centrifuges that may still exist. The very large stockpiles of highly enriched uranium that the Iranians retain. What's going to happen to all that? And the United States obviously could play an important role in ensuring this job is done correctly. It also, we have to think about what choices do the Iranians make here. I think the president is now positioning himself as the man who's at the center of this game, who can call off the pain for Iran if it makes some right decisions right now, but he can also ensure that it gets dialed up if the Iranians make the wrong decisions now. He's offering them, has been for 60 days, his deadline. It expired. They saw what happened on day 61 when they didn't take the deal. He's now offering them the off-ramp of taking a deal, agree to destroy and dismantle your nuclear weapons capability entirely, and you might get out of this in better shape than you otherwise will be. But if they don't take that option, if they do decide to escalate, which seems, if they're capable of it at this point, given how many people they've lost, I assume they still are, then I think the United States is probably going to move and get into this to help Israel, ensure this is done properly, and to help and ensure that the Iranians also can't reconstitute this program and start rebuilding it and start hiding things. I think we've got to, at least at an intelligence level, but even operationally, to be working closely with the Israelis to see what the Iranians now attempt to do with what remains of their nuclear program. So I think we're just going to have to see all that. One big point that I'm reminded of today is just the value of this partnership we have with Israel. It's hard to think of any other ally of the United States anywhere in the world that would be capable on its own of undertaking an operation like this against our absolutely most dangerous adversary in a critical part of the world where U.S. vital interests are deeply engaged. You can't imagine any of our friends doing this in Europe against Russia, except perhaps the Ukrainians, and certainly not in Asia against the Chinese target. But Israel is really taking care of this problem that American presidents for at least the last 25 years have been saying is getting rid of and preventing this Iranian nuclear weapon is in a vital interest of the United States. And now we see this partner of ours that we've invested heavily in this relationship actually upholding that interest. A couple of other points, Mike, just a foot stomp on the issue of Hezbollah being the dog that didn't bark. That's not by accident. What Israel did to Hezbollah last September, it was absolutely huge to make it an irrelevant factor in this calculation about going after the Iranians in such a large way. Also, it's not a day for politics, but for all the detractors of Prime Minister Netanyahu, he said he was too cautious. He would never, when push came to shove, have the guts to pull the trigger and go after the Iranian nuclear program, despite a lot of talk about that he was this was his mission in life, to ensure Iran couldn't threaten Israel with a nuclear weapon. The fact that he has now undertaken this incredibly bold and daring move and approved it, I think will October the 7th will always be there in his biography and his obituary, but I think people are rewriting it today. Again, a long way to go. We'll have to see what happens, but but a big day, I think, in terms of Prime Minister Netanyahu.
John, I may add, it requires an American to say something like that. No Israeli.
Yeah, no doubt. But I do think it should be noted because he's got a lot of detractors who thought this day might never come, and I think we'll have to see exactly what the history reveals about the interactions between the United States and Israel over the last few months. But it's hard to believe President Trump was really enthusiastic for this moment to come, and I think the Prime Minister stuck to his guns about what Israel's vital national interest, even existential interests, were in this case. And I think the president obviously takes that very, very seriously, and obviously by some of the comments he's made this morning, he respects it enormously, and he's gonna support Israel going forward. Just a quick note about our Gulf allies. There's been a lot of noise, some condemnations publicly, but I can just imagine that they're worried. They want to stay off of Iran's target list. But there must be a lot of cheering behind the scenes and deep hopes that this is as successful as it can be over the coming days. And I just think it's another reason why the United States needs to see its interests now as completely aligned with Israel's in ensuring this is as successful as possible, that the threat of Iran's, any effort by Iran to widen this war, turn it into a much larger escalation, that those are deterred, and Iran knows that if it attempts such action, it does run a high risk of having to deal not only with the full weight of Israeli military power, but with an American military that is very well postured in the region to do enormous damage to Iran, not only its nuclear assets, but if it's not careful, a much wider range of political, economic, and military targets that really could put the regime at risk. And I think if we have that kind of success in containing this war, destroying as much of this nuclear program as we can, I think it sets us up for enormous opportunities in the broader Middle East. And I think the United States needs to keep that strategic opportunity in mind here as it thinks about exactly what it does over the coming hours and days. Finally, I know General Amidror said, this isn't about regime change. I'm absolutely certain that's no doubt the case. It's not an Israeli war objective, but it's hard not to notice that there must be some meaning in the naming of the operation as Rising Lion, which seems to be a clear and obvious reference to ancient Persia and the Iranian nation being able to rise out from under the heel of this tyrannical regime that's governed it for the last 45 years. There must be a lot of happy people in Iran. We'll see what it is they choose to do. But they're also as deeply obvious the deep penetration of Iran's system, of its bureaucracy, to be able to undertake the kinds of operations we've seen. There may be a lot of people that rally to the regime now to enforce its will, but you've got to believe there are a lot of very, very nervous, high-level Iranian officials, security officials, and others who worry they could be next on the list. And we'll just have to see how this plays out internally in Iran. You can't bank on it. The objective here is to destroy as much of the Iranian nuclear program as possible and prevent any kind of wider war. But keeping an eye on how this affects the internal dynamic in Iran, I think, will be important, and certainly something that I'll be watching in the coming days.
Okay, so I agree with you. So look, and this will obviously have a big impact, I think, on the internal U.S. foreign policy debate, although that's maybe secondary right now, how this thing plays out, what happens, what doesn't happen, what the U.S. does, what it doesn't do. think it's going to have a big impact here. But we've run out of time. We have a lot more questions. I know I do. So what I'm going to ask is, my hope is we're going to work this out. This was organized, very quickly last night, early this morning. I hope we'll get our same all-star team here back on Monday, and we could review where things are after the weekend, and we'll just continue to do these webinars as this action continues. And I want to thank you all, General Norkin and General Ayish and General Amidror and John, Hannah, for joining us at last minute. And I want to thank everybody for joining. I think it's fair to say that, as I always say when I'm in Israel, I think we want to wish the Israeli military and all their intelligence services, the whole government, Hatzlacha. We want to wish them all the good luck, because your success is our success. You're fighting not only for your own security, but as Steve Witkoff said the other night, the Iranian nuclear program is not only an existential threat to the Israelis, but also to the United States. It's in our core strategic interest that Israel succeeds and be perceived as succeeding. And I also think it's in our interest that we be perceived as helping Israel as much as possible. But we'll talk about that maybe on Monday. Meanwhile, we want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you very much for joining, and I wish everybody be safe in Israel. Thank
Shabbat
you.
Shalom.
Bye.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.